Welcome, everyone, to the Dice Storm Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, Luke. Today with me, I have Nick. And in this podcast, you're going to be hearing about the hobby progress me and Nick have done within the past couple weeks since the last podcast. We're going to go into a deep dive for the GreyKnights. Lots of lore, characters, and tabletop rules, and just in general, why they're a great faction. Later on, towards the end of the podcast, me and Nick are going to do a bit of a deep dive onto World Eaters. This is coming from a guy who doesn't know much about World Eaters, and Nick, who knows a lot about Chaos lore. So we're going to see where that goes. And to end this all off, we're going to go with a hobby tip provided graciously by our guest, Nick, about transfers. So keep in tune for that if you're interested. So to start us off, Nick, everyone heard me. You wanna introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey, you guys. Okay, so I'll just jump right into hobby progress. What have I been doing? Well, since I've actually started to be able to go to mini wargaming, I'm going to be going with another guest that's usually on the show, Thomas. I'm prepping my word bearers, so gonna do some Terminators, gonna get the Anointed going, and then I just finished 3 rhinos. They're painted, sitting over there. Just the transfers left.
Okay, and so when you're going to mini wargaming, are these models that you're bringing? Are they going to be more for a competitive game? Or are you going to be having fun? Do you intend to win? What's your goal here?
Honestly, just to go play. I don't care to win. If they want to do a competitive game because maybe they don't do it as often and they want to try something, fantastic. Right. If they want to go for a non-competitive game, awesome. If they want to do a narrative thing, I'm all in.
So I'm not really well familiar with mini wargaming. Do they have an Ultramarine player?
That's a great question. I have seen somebody use them before. I don't think they have an Ultramarine player. They have a really nice painted Ultramarine army that they bring in every now and again, but a lot of guests bring Ultramarine.
Because I mean, if you're going to bring World Eaters, they have to bring Ultramarines.
Oh, I mean, if I bring the word bearers,
they have to do it, right?
Yeah, that would be cool.
I mean, it's kind of like bringing World Eaters and not playing against. Oh my gosh, why can't I think of the faction that hates World Eaters all of a sudden? Anyways, doesn't matter. I digress. No, well, they're all berserkers, right?
Yeah, so. Exactly.
Okay, perfect. As for myself, I'll give a really quick short recap. I'm in the midst of bettering myself for tournaments. I've been a Custodies player for over 4 years, so everyone don't think I'm started jumping on the bandwagon. I've been learning to get better. I want to play Custodies competitively, and been building lists around that. Additionally, I also have a meme list that you're well aware of. 27 models. Every single model is a Custodian Terminator. So that one I'm really excited to play.
It's my dream list.
Oh, honestly, I cannot wait to see how it plays. But enough of that. We're going to talk about the other famous Terminators in Warhammer, the ever great GreyKnights, elusive, mysterious, and you, my friend, know way more than any heretic should.
Yeah. So they're by far my favorite chapter. Just favorite Marine, favorite Xenos, name it. It's my favorite thing to just have in 40K. It's actually what got me into 40K. So it was the first army I owned. So basically, they are the psychic defense to chaos, is the best way I can do it. They're all about dealing with chaos. They're the experts. You ask them to deal with a Tyrannid, they probably don't know what to do. You ask them to deal with a demon, they'll tell you what specific point, who, what, where, when, how.
Right.
So they kind of started actually in the Horus Heresy. So at this point in the Heresy, when the GreyKnights are starting to be made, heresies happen. Drop site massacres happen. Everything's happened. And the Emperor's like, the secret's out. It's happened. So he tasks Malkador, the Sigillite, who's like number 2, I think. Yeah, he's like the second in command.
Yeah, he's basically, for those who don't know, Malkador is basically the Emperor's only true friend. He's the only person that the Emperor is openly respected and, can find a lot of things to. And, so you're saying the Emperor number 2, Malkador?
Yeah, so he takes Malkador and he goes, find these guys or find people that you trust or have shown that they are, incorruptible.
Right.
And he goes out and he finds, at the drop site massacre, they find a couple guys that are, surviving. Death Guard guys.
Right. So, we got, Nathaniel Garrow. We have Garviel Loken. We have all these, heretics, so to speak.
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
Were loyal to the Emperor.
And that's what caused the problem, because Garrow comes back and kind of warns them as to what's going on. And I think it's even, oh, my God, Dorn. Dorn, is about to kill him. into what's going on.
Oh my God! You know what? I totally forgot about this.
Yeah,
scene. You're absolutely right.
He's like, "You're a heretic. Why are you here? You're a Death Guard." And he's like, "No. Like, I'm with you guys. I'm telling you this is happening. They're making their way here." Like, he squeezes out somehow with Malkador. There's a whole thing on how he gets back, and Dorn is like half a second from killing him, and then he convinces him otherwise. And then from there, with Malkador, Garrow, and a few other people, I think we know about 4 or 5 of the original 7 or 8.
Yeah, so I know, personally, I'm not super well versed in the lore, but personally I know of Garviel Loken, I know Nathaniel Garrow, and there's a third one who's slipping my mind, but he's pretty popular amongst the OGs.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of well-named characters that become the original Grey Knights. Now, it's very interesting because the Supreme Grand Master who becomes like the first leader of the Grey Knights, we don't really know much about him except he came from the Thousand Suns. And whatever Malkador did to him fixed the Thousand Suns curse of turning into like a dust robot.
So you're telling me that the first Grey Knight, the Psychic Astartes Chapter Master or Grand Master as they're called properly, was not a Thousand Sun sorcerer?
I don't know exactly what it is. There's not enough lore behind him because we get a lore after this happens. So he goes through this change, let's say, with Malkador, and basically Malkador cures him of the Thousand Suns curse.
Okay. So,
And, yeah.
if he cures them of the Thousand Suns curse, I don't know much about Thousand Suns, but I do know that the Thousand Suns were cursed by themselves for the Rubicon.
Yeah.
So that would imply, and the Rubicon was for all the non-sorcerers. So that would imply that he was a non-sorcerer.
Exactly.
Okay.
But I'm sure he still had some psychic thing that Malkador must have known because he wouldn't have been a Grey Knight otherwise.
I mean, that makes sense because during the Horus Heresy, and this is obviously, if people haven't caught on by now, we're going into a bit of spoiler territory, but like during the Horus Heresy series written by, I think it was Dan Abnett wrote this one, Garviel Loken discovers that he's psychic, and he spent his entire career like not thinking he was. So yeah, I can believe it that just one Rubik Marine all of a sudden is all like, wait, what?
Yeah, exactly. And at the time with Heresy, like psychers were kind of frowned upon, and then they were started to become really needed to deal with this kind of threat. So exactly for that point. So here comes this Thousand Suns guy that they've gone out and really specifically selected along with some others and does this whole magic show. And then here he comes out as this new guy called Janus, and he becomes the first Grand Master.
Janus, that name is ringing a bell, so that kind of segues into our next part, a bit about characters. Is Janus still alive in the 41st millennia? No.
So this is where it gets really cool for me, and this is why I love Drago. So Drago, he's kind of been there really from the beginning almost. Not an OG, nothing like that. It's when the chapter first started. He was one of the first recruits, and he built his way up and became the new Grand Master. Now, what happened is Janus goes up against Morty in full Demon Primarch mode. And they go toe-to-toe. Eventually, Morty kills him. So,
as a Primarch should.
Right, exactly. It makes sense. He's still a Terminator, even though he's some super character. At least, he's a Terminator. He was in Terminator armor. Like, it's not a Demon Primarch versus, Gilliman or another Primarch. So, he kills him. Then Drago goes kind of like Super Saiyan in a way.
Yeah.
And basically takes on Morty one-on-one, which is like, what is happening? Ends up beating him and carves Janus' name onto Morty's heart.
Oh,
and then,
okay.
yeah, like he really gets into it. And Morty goes, he basically won, and Morty goes, poof, back into the warp.
Okay, so like, I'm a big lore junkie, right? We all know that the lore from Black Library doesn't always make the most sense. From my perspective, an Astartes, because we can't forget Grey Knights are Astartes at the end of the day.
Yep.
Even if they might have the Emperor's gene seed, because that's a rumor as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
Even if they do, like, a Grey Knight taking on a Primarch is something a little redonkulous.
I agree. I think it was also Morty was pretty weak at this point.
Yeah, so it's a back-to-back fight,
Yeah.
and I mean, like, Drago is absolutely ludicrous. And I mean, I don't know much about him, honestly. Like, I'm ashamed to say all I know about Drago is the TTS series on YouTube. I'm not sponsored to say that. It's a great series. It kind of mocks a bit of Warhammer, but it's still pretty good to talk about. But yeah, so Drago beats Morty. Okay.
So Drago beats Morty, carves the name on his heart, and forever him and Morty now have this internal vendetta, let's say. Right. And they go back and forth, and Morty's got a thing out for Drago. Now, at this point, he's not Grand Master. There's a new one that has to be selected, whatever, so on and so on. He ends up becoming the Grand Master. So, now, the way you could think of Drago is think of him as, like, this guy's for an Astartes. You could I would say he could take on like Logar and some weaker Primarchs, just based off the lore, which makes no sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. But that's that psychic power coming in. So is to build to let you before you continue. Like, is Drago absurdly strong for a psyker? Not martial prowess, but for like a psyker. Is he?
I would say he's probably the most mentally tough. So whereas Chaos, what they do is like obviously Chaos tries to tempt people, distract them, this, that, and that's how they get some kills with psychic powers too. Take Drago, take the GreyKnights' whole chapter as a point of being anti-psyker for Chaos, and then making a Primarch out of them is the way to think of it.
Okay, so like that reminds me of so Drago kind of he's so incorruptible. He's kind of like Endymion Ra from the Horus Heresy novels. I don't know if you know him, but he was a custodian that the Emperor stabbed through the chest with a cursed blade, which I believe is the blade Abaddon is using right now. And that custodian walked through the webway until he died, just straight up died, and he never fell to chaos, supposedly never fell through chaos. So what you're telling me is you believe that if Drago would be to swap place with Endymion Ra, as an Astartes, he probably would have same path kind of thing.
And I'll tell you why. Because essentially, Drago becomes Grand Master, they vote him in, and he becomes the head of, the whole ordeal. So he gets the Titan Sword, which is like the Grand Master sword. Now, he has his GreyKnights. There's only 1,000 of them, and there's a reason for it. Like, they never go less, never go more. Think of them having, like, the best of the best. And what's cool is the models represented. They have different helmets, armor. Everything's all different and, like, on times 10 compared to other chapters what they get.
Right. So, but when you're saying it's times 10, like, so we're in the 41st millennia. Mark 10's the thing, but I think it's Mark 8 that the tactical Marines are using. Are you saying that GreyKnight armor is better than its equivalent, or are you just saying that like it's maybe a bit more armored kind of thing?
Better.
It's inherently better.
Like they made this somehow when they made this. I think it was Call who had like Belisarius Call had a perfect like he was in it. He made Terminator armor like super smooth. They're not like these hulking things because remember this is in Heresy. So these Terminator armors, they're not like the other ones where they're very square, boxish, hard to move tank things. These guys are meant to be mobile, and then that's represented by some of the other gear they have. But
right. So like the guests can't see, but we have Terminators right in front of us right now. We don't have the original ones, but we definitely have the GreyKnight ones in front of us. Now, Nick, would you say that? So as we all know, Custodians get the creme of the creme. They get the cherry on top with their armors and everything like that. How? Like on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 would be Astartes Terminator armor and 10 would be Custodes Terminator armor, where does that GreyKnight armor fall? More or less.
That's tough because I don't know too much about Custodes. I know how like they're really good. I don't know much about their armor per se. But
so like a TLDR for Custodian Terminators is there's a snippet in the 8th edition Codex, I believe, where they mention that a Custodian wearing Allura's Terminator armor can forget that he's wearing armor. He can genuinely forget he's wearing it.
I would say it's close.
Okay.
You're definitely going to know they're wearing armor, but it's very mobile, especially the Terminators. Like, GreyKnights are known for their Terminators. They do have regular Marine armor and everything, but what makes them also super deadly is they get that armor because it's also very... Think of, like, the enemy they're going against. Their armor is designed to have the most protection against chaos. So even their armor is engraved with sayings to hurt chaos.
Right. So their armor isn't necessarily the thickness, so to speak, of the armor is not as important as what it does.
Exactly. Okay. So that's what makes it so much tougher. Now, it might be a little bit better than, let's say, regular armor and everything. I don't know the specifics, but it's usually the only really test that we have is when GreyKnights are fighting chaos.
Right. Yeah. When they're fighting like chaos,
they fight space wolves,
and we know in Plague Lord, I believe is the book. It's or Plague God. Anyways, it's one where Typhus fights a Grand Master. Not a Grand. So first of all, before we continue, because I'm goofy, what's the title of like a captain?
Yeah, so that's what I'll get into in just a second. We'll go back kind of to the lore and how they're designed and like how their setup is. But yeah, that's what I say. But what makes them deadly too is because they take the psychic that they're so inclined to and they power their weapons through it. So if a Marine was to pick it up, it would be like just picking up a bolter.
Yeah, well, it's like a force sword for a librarian. But like what I'm getting at is like to just give people like context, right? So Typhus is like a blade master. Well, blade is a weird word, but he's a top tier fighter. He's from the Heresy. He's done things. He's first captain of the Death Guard. You know, Morty, regardless of what people think, doesn't pick a fight with him. partially because Nurgle doesn't want him to, but also partially because, well, Typhus holds a bit of ground. You know, he could fuck. He's not that he could fuck up Morty, but you know, he could cause him some hurt, basically. And there's a Grand Master working for Gilman who beats Morty, who beats Typhus. Sorry, and like that should just represent like how good these GreyKnights are.
Yeah.
Not just combat, but like armor wise. You know, just their augments and everything. They taking on Typhus is a big deal, especially in this stage of the 41st millennia.
Yeah, exactly. And that's to my point, right? Like, GreyKnights are the only ones that know how to fight Nurgle properly. Like, they're not going to get slowed down by Nurgle's curses and diseases and everything. They're designed to be that kind of tough and everything. Like, if you take Gilliman when Ultramar's getting all messed up, like, he didn't know what to do. The GreyKnights could have helped him there and told him, like, listen, they're trying to mess with you. Like, this is what you got to do, put bubbles. And that's what Valdis does. But we'll come back to, like, how it's all organized here.
So just to end off our little lore section for a tiny little bit before we embark into something else serious, would you say that the GreyKnights are more efficient against fighting not Chaos Astartes but demons than the Sister of Silence?
Yes.
You would? Okay.
Yes.
And why is that? Because the Sisters of Silence, you have to remember, are soulless. Therefore, psychers don't affect them to begin with. And demons literally die within their presence. So I'm curious to see why you think the GreyKnights are better.
The reason why is because GreyKnights fight every day to fight against one enemy. You take a sister and you tell me, hey, they're going to fight Tyranids. I'm going with the sisters, to be honest. I mean, GreyKnights, they're Astartes. They know how to fight or whatever. They still have that background, but their specialty is for that. Even if they don't die right in front of them, I'm sure they're going to be more efficient with it.
Okay, so what you're saying is the Sisters of Silence obviously hold a level of martial skill because they are the Emperor's left hand. But like when it comes to just sheer demons, GreyKnights are like they are none bar none.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would get at. Their whole thing is to deal with them. So if they can't do that and there's somebody better than them, why have them, kind of thing, you know?
Right.
This is from an outside view, but that's what I would go with.
Okay. So yeah, no. The next little part that we wanted to get into before we start getting into the actual tabletop is we wanted to get into some characters. So we mentioned Drago, we mentioned Janus, we mentioned Loken, we even mentioned Garo. Like. We won't just mention them. What like aside? You said Drago beat Morty. What other grand feats have they done?
So I'll stick with Drago. Let's finish with Drago, and then I'll go to the next ones because then we can really tell. So, like I said, Drago beats Morty, right?
Yeah.
Drago becomes the new Grand Master. He's leading his force, and he ends up going against this crazy demon, this crazy guy, and they've had toe-to-toes in the past. So now he gets called to this world. It's something about this world that always drags the two of them back to it. So then Drago ends up beating this demon. I don't know what kind of demon. I think it was a demon of Slaanesh, something along those lines. He beats him really bad. So the demon like puts a curse on Drago that if he ever goes back to this world, he'll get sucked to the warp and may not be able to return back to real time.
Okay, now this is from an outsider who knows like a lot of superficial lore. Isn't Drago currently stuck in the warp?
So that's what I'm going to get at next. So that's exactly what happens is, hey, this world, I forgot the name of it, is having a demon incursion again. And Drago knew right away it's that demon again because it's the same world. It's antagonizing him. So Drago says, nobody else come. I'm going alone. Nobody else is getting sucked in with this. Now, obviously, that doesn't happen. Some of them go with him and against him and help him. They beat the demon, everything. Drago gets sucked into the warp. So now Drago's been there for a long time to the point where his sword breaks fighting a bloodthirster, beats the bloodthirster, takes the bloodthirster's weapon, fuses it, makes a new sword with like half the original, half the bloodthirster's axe.
So you know, just the lore you're describing, Drago sounds like an absolute mad lad to begin with, and like, I mean, I just can't get over how Slaaneshi that kind of like taunt is, right? He's like, yeah, you can't come back here, else you're like, you know, screwed. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, we're gonna attack again. By the way, it's the epitome of like, well, you know, excuse the expression, but cockholding somebody.
Yeah. Pretty much. And Dragos was like, you know what? I don't care. I'm stopping you. Like, I'm winning this. This is going to happen. So he ends up getting to the warp, and he's there forever. But now what happens is Drago every now and again gets sucked back out with the demon incursion. So he'll find a portal, he'll get sucked out, and he's even seen GreyKnights, and he's like, who are you guys? He has no idea who these GreyKnights are anymore because whoever was with him at the time, well, it's a long time past. So obviously with the warp, timing's all weird. So he finally comes back and forth, but he always gets sucked back into the warp because of the curse.
Right. So because of the nature of 40K and how like time degrades and everything like that, so because of this curse, Drago is inherently becoming more and more the most powerful being in the universe to a certain degree.
In a way. So this is where people are getting a little like worried with Drago, right? Because he's been in the warp forever. Eventually it's going to give. But apparently he's just going through each Chaos land. He's going through Slaanesh, Khorne, Nurgle, and he's just ruining fortresses and everything.
But
He's
I mean,
a one-man army.
But like, he's absolutely one-man army. To kind of like build on that, like what I was getting at was like, so when Abaddon and his Black Crusade came out of the warp, like for them it was a couple 100 years, I would assume, but they come from the time of, bigger, better combat. And we do know that as 40K progresses, maybe not in the future because the Primarchs are coming back, but at the time when time progresses, people get worse inherently. They get more complacent, they get more lenient, and blah 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 blah. So like to me, this is sounding like Drago eventually he's gonna look at like, let's say the Imperium's best fighters, the Custodians, and he's gonna be like, don't get in my way. And the Custodians are gonna, not that they won't hesitate because Custodians don't hesitate, but it's gonna be like not a one-sided fight, but they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to die doing this kind of thing.
I would, like, with him personally, just the way, like, the lore's been written around him and how, like, weird things are with him and how incredible he is, I would say so. But it's like, he's never left his prime. And that's why people are like, is he corrupted by chaos without knowing? Is a whole thing. But now, he's actually back.
Okay, he's back.
Somehow, that's what I have to look more into it. I forgot to look into it before the podcast. But basically, he's out. So now he knows nobody at the what's going on, and everybody's kind of filling him in. So that's the last thing we've kind of known from him.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Cool. Let's I love to keep talking about Drago because he's really really cool. But let's get into. Actually, last little bit I brought up TTS. You watched TTS, right?
I did, but I don't remember this one.
Okay, you know what? Then never mind. We won't get into it then. I was gonna ask you how comparable he is to his TTS counterpart, but if you don't remember, let's not get into it. Yeah. So we're talking about characters. That doesn't have to be named characters. I'm curious about how, as we know them in 40K, characters are like captains, chapter masters, and all these blah blah blah. What is the role of initiation for a Grey Knight warrior, whatever, to become? Let's say, I know paladins. Paladins are like the death shroud of Grey Knights. So like, what do they need to do to achieve that rank of honor?
Okay, you're right, and it's a lot. So let me start with just the basic guy that gets in. So the Grey Knights recruit from anywhere. Doesn't matter if you're an Astartes, if you're a High Lord, or a regular peasant from a agri world. Doesn't make a difference. If you got what it takes from what they think, they're bringing you. Now, in order to just be accepted into the selection process, let's say, you have to go to this world. I don't know if it's Titan itself. I think it is. Basically, the ground is like, they give you nothing. You're stripped to nothing but like your clothes. And then you got to make a walk from one side to the fortress. If you make it to the fortress, you get to the next part. You even just get armor right away. But then you still got testing and stuff. If you make it there. So this is like a crazy 2-3 month, however long it takes for you to get from point A to point B. But now along that time, you're going crazy. There's chaos getting to you. There's all kinds of stuff. And it's basically to test your mental resilience. That's step one. If you pass, which I think the numbers are ridiculous for who gets in. It's like 1 in, I don't want to say 1 million, but like 100,000. It's really crazy. It's absurd.
Well, 100,000 makes sense because I'm pretty sure the Custodes process is like 1 in 1 million. I'd have to double check that. But like, if you would assume that one Custode is better than one Grey Knight, which I think is a fair assumption, it would make sense that becoming a Grey Knight would be, air quotes, 10 times easier.
Yeah, it's something along those lines, but it's still a ridiculous number considering other chapters.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Where like we could be getting our numbers wrong, but like what people need to understand is like it's harder to become a Grey Knight than a Astartes à la base.
It's insane. Yeah. So let's say you get to that process, they give you the armor. Like you've gotten to that point, you get an armor, and now it's time to really test your might with groups. You do training and everything, and you're in. Now, in the Grey Knights, there's 7 brotherhoods. So there's some named characters for each brotherhood, and then in that brotherhood, there's 2 separate higher, like I'd say the brotherhoods are there, and then above them, there's 2 separate things. So there's the Purifiers, which have the white helmets, and then the Paladins. So the Paladins, you could look at them as like, they are the toppity tippity top of the fighting Grey Knights.
They're the first company of the Grey Knights, basically.
Kind of, but they're not a company. They're like a separate thing.
Okay.
So I think their official role is like the protectors of grandmasters and everything.
So they're not necessarily just veterans. They're better. So
Yeah.
so I guess they would be comparable to custodian wardens, where they're a class of GreyKnights that are meant to protect a different class, and they are the epitome of martial power that they have.
Yeah. So let alone becoming a Grey Knight Terminator is like veteran status. And then to become a paladin, you basically, if you like, it's not even like you sign up to do it. You're like, I want to become a Grey Knight paladin. I think I'm ready. I think you have to be a little bit selected, but at the same time, it's your choice. Basically, they go, here's your armor, here's your bolter, here's your weapon, go kill a greater demon. That's it. Just go out, do it.
Okay, and you said greater demon.
Bloodthirster, keeper of secrets,
Great
the
unclean
big
one.
murgly one, yep, and Lord of Change. Something along those lines.
Okay.
With nothing else.
Now, let's pull back a little bit. Okay, so to begin with, as far as I'm aware, there's not many of these things that are around. If I remember correctly, when Terra got sieged by Khorne, there was 5 bloodthirsters. So if you want to look at this in like a vacuum, that means that only 5 GreyKnights could have possibly became a paladin on that siege, where was like almost the end of the world for the custodians, at least.
Like, in achieving paladin status makes everybody get out of your way.
Okay, so it's a kind of like a 80s Air Force kind of vibe, where it's like, they're the Air Force, leave them alone.
Yeah, kind of. So it takes a lot to become one, and most people don't become one, obviously. So that's the paladin side. So that's, you could think of like, they're the best of the best in the fighters of the GreyKnights. Now the other side is the purifiers. So the purifiers are kind of the most zealous, more the spiritual, psychic side. Now these guys are also the same, where if you see them, you don't mess with them, because honestly, they're probably worse than the GreyKnights, because you talk to them, they're always about dealing with the worst. And even their head of the purifiers is carrying around the craziest sword. And I'll get into that in a second. We're going to talk about him because he's another character. But like, they're designed to be like, hey, the GreyKnights section is like, here's all our anti-psychic. On the left side of our fortress, there's a small little area that nobody goes to but the purifiers.
And when you say they're the most zealous, are we talking like Black Templar zealous? Or are we talking like they're just like Ultramarines, kind of like, we're going to follow the Emperor's dictates to the letter?
Kind of. So more the Emperor side. So they're not the best fighters, let's put it that way, but they have the best psychic ability, and they're like the incorruptible. Like, these guys are the ones that you're like, man, we don't know what to do with this. This is really scary. We don't know it. For even GreyKnights, get the purifiers in there. They'll deal with it.
Okay, so they're the no questions asked.
Yeah.
They're we're gonna pick up any poo that nobody wants to deal with.
It's like, okay, this is even for a GreyKnight, this is too much. Call in like the reinforcements, which is the purifier. So they're not the best fighters, but they are like, they have an aura around them that just you don't mess with, kind of thing. So speaking of, we'll get into the character of it, who got a revamp, is Castellan Crow.
Yeah.
So this guy is the head of them. So this guy, nothing can get to him, and it's kind of bonkers because the way they write him, they give him this super magic sword to the point where the GreyKnights are scared of it, period. They couldn't destroy it. It just wouldn't die. It's just there. So they were like, how do we deal with it? Because if they leave it hung up in the building, it tempts every GreyKnight in the fortress. It's always talking to people to be like, oh, if you want to do better, take my sword, I'll help you. And it constantly. So they were like, how do we deal with this? Let's give it to someone. So Castellan Crow, who's a crazy fighter to start with, they were like, here. Because they knew that he'll never give in. No matter how bad the situation is, he'd rather die than give in, right? So they give him this sword, who's always tempting him. It's like, even when Castellan Crow's like about to lose, he's like, hey, you know what? The sword's talking to him like, come on, I'll help you out. I'll give you a little extra help with it. We'll get them together. Something like that. Little things like this. And Castellan Crow says nothing. Like, he's almost like a mute.
Okay.
And
yeah.
He just takes the sword and does his thing like a power sword. It's the best way to describe it. It's not like because he's not using the power of it.
Yeah, so he's not. It's not like Murder, the sword that Abaddon uses, where it like buffs Abaddon because it's like it's its own mental process and everything like that. Castellan Crow, exactly like you're saying, it's just a fancy sword.
Exactly. That's it. So they gave it to him. So now the fortress is actually safe now because it's just constantly talking to him. Where now it's not bothering anyone else. So they didn't know what to do with it. So that's that sword. Now, there's something on Titan, I don't know, there's some super secret, like, they have, like, a whole bunch of stuff in there that it's very secretive, so even the lore written about them is, like, kind of like, come on now, give me something, give me something. So that's the Paladins and the Purifiers. Now, for the Paladins, there is a high Paladin. I got his name here. I'm going to attempt this. Kaor Tempest. He's the Paragon Prime. So he's the leader of the Paladins. Not much is known about him, to be honest. The Paladins are kind of just like there. But if you know there's a Grandmaster, there's a Paladin. So in the Seven Brotherhoods, there's two characters that we know, and there's one of them that's probably the most famous one, which is the Ward Makers. Now, the Ward Makers has Grandmaster Valdis, who has a model, and Brother Captain Stern. So the way you got to think of it is a Grandmaster is like a captain. A Brother Captain is like a lieutenant.
Okay, you see, like I would have never assumed that off the top of my head. So I'm glad you cleared that out.
So
okay.
they have some weird names, but that's the way to think of it. So there's the Supreme Grandmaster, which is the Chapter Master,
right?
Draco.
Which is Draco, yeah.
Then you got Grandmasters, who are kind of the head of each company, let's say, the captains of each company, and then you got lieutenants, who are the brother captains. So there's the two characters, Averin Stern and Grandmaster Valdis. Now Valdis, the Ward Makers, are the psychers of the GreyKnights. They're like. They handle a lot of psychic powers, and including Valdis, he's like the super psyker of the GreyKnights. Whereas, like I said, Castellan Crow has, he's this anti-psyker, everything like that. This guy's actually, he knows how to control the warp.
Okay.
So that's that company. Those are really the characters that we know about. Now, there's also some other characters, some minor characters put in through the lore, some other Grandmasters and stuff, and the Codex does a great job of explaining it.
Yeah.
But they're not really of note as of right now. They're really the go-to guys.
Well, it's kind of like almost anything, right? Like when you get a Space Marine Codex, you have like all 10 companies, and they'll name the captain of each company. But like, what do they? If you're not Ultramarine, the names of these captains are more for fluff than anything else.
Exactly. Unless they're the big names, you're not really going to know them.
Yeah. So, okay, just to close off, because we're gonna start talking about rules really quick, and then we're gonna go into what's cool, because I want to save time for some world eaters. Really, just quick close off. GreyKnights, although they're psychic Astartes, that doesn't mean they're the best psychers, right? Like, if I'm going to take, I might trigger some people saying this, but I'm going to take Mephiston, right? Mephiston's a better psycher than the general GreyKnight group.
Yeah, I wouldn't say Mephiston's better than Grandmaster, especially not Valdis. But I would say Mephiston can walk in there and really just, he'll fit right in, and he'll be at the top notch of the psychers. For
okay.
Sure. Yeah,
okay.
That I would agree with.
So, yeah, and just like everything in Warhammer, right, just because they're better doesn't mean that an Astartes can't beat a GreyKnight in one-on-one. Like, it's not likely, but it doesn't mean it can't happen.
Right, exactly. The reason why GreyKnights are like that is because every single one of them is a psyker. So take like an army of librarians. That's the best way to do it, that are very combat-oriented. So, The way to think of GreyKnights isn't so much as their psychic offensive. It's more their psychic defense. They're anti-psychers is the best way to think of it, with having psychic potential.
Okay. So this is going to kind of get into the rules segment with my little segue right here. Would you say that this army of librarians you're saying is well represented in the tabletop?
Yes.
Yeah?
Finally. So in 8th edition, no. It was a little underwhelming. The rules were kind of lackluster. It was fun for a time, but they were also one of the first codexes in 8th. Now, this 9th edition codex, they did it, I think, to me, right on the nail on the head. It's not broken, it's very fluffy, and there's a lot of, like, it's anti-psychers. They have psychic potential, but there's no buffs to them. But you get a lot of buffs to anti-psychic stuff. So, and I'll get into that in a second here. So I think that, for sure, I would say this codex is spot on. Sure, there's some things you could change. There's some things like relics and stuff, obviously, that are weaker. But
yeah, but you can. There's always stuff like that, that you can change and stuff. But
yeah, but for the most part, I would love to see this continued in this theme. Maybe obviously a change at some point, but they did a really good job on how they handled it.
Okay, so like fundamentally speaking, we're getting into the rules segment of this podcast. What really makes GreyKnights their own thing from other Astartes in their rules, at least?
Yeah, so their rules, they have their own separate units. They're all unique. There's very rarely a transfer from Space Marines to GreyKnights, because they're all kind of different. Sure, they have Terminators, Strike Marines are tactical Marines, Racerbacks and all that, but they all have their own data sheet, and they're all different in a very unique way, because they're all psychers. Even if you lose the sergeant, the unit's a psyker.
So it's not like Thousand Suns, where their sergeant, air quotes, is the only psyker in their squad, kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And now, does that mean that you could potentially cap on smites, because they get harder? So if everybody's a psyker, could you hit that roll 12
easily?
Okay.
Yeah. Because think about it, if you get 15 units in a GreyKnight army, let's say,
yeah,
and you smite with every single one of them, I mean, you're going to cap, and then you're going to need a 13, which you can't get.
Actually, that's funny you bring that up. We're talking about, like, I didn't know smites could cap. I would have assumed that, like, 12 was, sorry, I said that wrong. I would have assumed 12 was the cap. I didn't realize that you could get to a point where you can't.
Because in the rules, it doesn't say caps. So it just keeps going. So you can get +1, +2, whatever, and just keep going with it. But, I mean,
so what you're saying is, like, in like a weird kind of world, like if Magnus was a loyalist and he gets his +3 to smite, +3 to cast and everything like that, with GreyKnights, you can get to a point where it's like only certain characters can keep casting.
Yeah, for sure, easily. Okay. And even then, most of the characters in this don't get +1 to cast.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and I'll get into that. So let's talk about the general rules. So you get a couple things. The Aegis, which is the anti-psychic potential for them. So basically, you get a 5+ mortal wound save, which is really good. I'd argue
5
it's
plus
really
mortal
good.
wound. Okay, it's not psychic mortal wounds.
Just
it's
mortal wounds.
Just mortal wounds.
Yeah, so that's
this is an
balance
8th edition codex, correct?
No, this is the 9th now.
Okay,
Yeah,
I didn't.
they
Oh my
updated it.
goodness, I feel like I've been following. I didn't realize that there was a 9th edition GreyKnights codex.
Yeah, you've never played against them. So
No, I've never played
yeah,
GreyKnights.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I know that I knew you loved GreyKnights, but I've never played against them.
Yeah, I don't think there's many players in our area, but for me, this is like, well, we've played the 8th edition codex where we had that stalemate, but that was a long time
that was
ago.
a different story. Yeah.
So they get a 5+ to mortal wounds saves if their army is fully GreyKnights. They also get a +1 to deny the witch. So like I said, they're very anti-psychic oriented, which I think is better than, because in the past they had +1 to cast, which didn't make sense for them fluff-wise, but it was cool.
Yeah, because that's not what they're using their psychic powers for, right? It's the opposite what they're using it for. Exactly that +1 to deny, like you're saying. Well, okay, that's neat. I like that. Okay.
And then, so there is some limitations for, like, you can only have one captain. Similar thing to Space Marines. Basically, almost copy and paste for lieutenants and chapter masters, captains, all that. What they do gain is a couple of other things in regards to weapons and stuff are different, but we'll get into that. But mainly for the army rules, +1 to deny, 5 up, feel no pain. That's just army-wide for being a Grey Knight. Now, what you can do is the 7 Brotherhoods, they actually gave them rules, so they didn't have that in the past.
For real?
No, in the past it was just Grey Knights, here's what you get, that's what you get. So that's why I'm like, oh my god, there's variety for Grey Knights.
Well, it's kind of funny that you say that because I consider myself a lore junkie. The guys in our group say that I'm pretty much like a budget lore master,
Yes.
and I didn't even know that Grey Knights had brotherhoods. Like this is news to me.
Yeah,
okay,
like they have chapters, let's say now, finally.
right.
So their shtick, what they get for being Grey Knights for their doctrines, let's say, because they do get a variation of that, is a psychic version of it. So at the start of the game, you pick one. So you get 4 different options. One's like anti-demon. One is like a protective one, which is like -1 to hit when you're 12 inches away. Then a very combat-oriented one for like mortal wounds. And then one to cast a psychic power more than once.
Wow. Okay.
So like if I want to do Sanctuary, just for example, gives a unit a 4+ invuln.
Okay.
I can do this thing where it switches it to where I can cast this multiple times if the people know the ability.
Yeah.
It just adds +1. So I could just keep casting 4+ invulns on everything that can do it, or however many casts I can do.
So basically, you can turn any spell into a smite equivalent.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And you get the benefits on all the other ones. So those are the 4 doctrines. Now, the way they work is you pick one at the start of the game and you're stuck in it. The way to get out of it is a psychic power.
That's so cool.
Right?
Oh
It's
my
very
God.
fitting, and it's like, okay, they're really strong doctrines compared to the regular assault and everything like that. So in order to get it, you got to get a psychic power. Someone can cast it. Arguably, it kind of sucks because it could be denied, right? And if you lose a psyker that has it,
damn.
it's kind of like, it's a big risk, right?
Oh wait, so it's not even kind of like, it's not even just like a spell, like a smite spell. Like you have to pick this.
You have to pick it. So a character has to pick it.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you lose that character in turn 2, you're stuck in whatever, I forgot what they're called. You're stuck in that, let's say, doctrine.
Okay. Dang.
So,
okay.
yeah, there's definitely some to it. There's a little bit of thinking involved. So it's like either you're going to have a character that's never going to be able to get shot and always protected, or you're going to try to get it on multiple characters.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So that's the other thing. And we're going to get into it more specifically a little bit later. But now there's the Brotherhoods. Now there's 7. There's a lot to go through. I'm not going to go through each one.
Yeah, you want to give me like just a quick overview.
So you get a stratagem for each.
Okay.
You get a psychic power for each.
Okay.
And a relic or a warlord trait. A warlord trait.
Well, I mean, I would assume it's both, no?
No.
So
no
okay,
relics.
so it's not like you were so close to being like the Custodes Codex, you just missed the marge by a tiny bit.
Which I'm okay with, because the relics, the way it's done is like, it's not meant to think of, because the GreyKnights are one big chapter, and in the chapter is the Brotherhood, so it kind of gives it some separation, but they're technically still the one
so
chapter.
they're not like individual entities. They're really just, I guess, almost specialists. Borderline.
Exactly. It's like a fighting style is different. That's the way to think of it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I'll go through a couple. Like, it's funny, the Sword Bearers one here is the shooty version of GreyKnights.
Sword Bearer is a shooty. Okay,
Yeah,
everyone remember that. Sword Bearer is a shooty.
Right. So they get a psychic power that everybody in the army knows. So I'll get into that in a second. Just think of like every army, or everybody in the army knows this psychic power, which is basically for these guys, you get a 4+ invuln. So now, think of what I was talking about earlier. If you put that psychic power, I could be like 4+ invuln, 4+ invuln, 4+ invuln, 4+ invuln. And it could just go around. I could be Oprah giving it out. You know,
you get 4+ invuln. You get a 4+ invuln. Okay, cool. Okay,
so that's that. Then you get that's a warlord trait to give that psychic power. Then there's the psychic power to add a wound roll on an attack. So it could be shooting.
Okay, so you can add +1 to wound with that other GreyKnight spell, the Psy Bullets.
Yeah, it's a stratagem to make everything stronger. Yeah.
Oh,
so you can get some wombo combos.
And you can shoot through terrain with that one, right? Like
they changed it a bit. Astral aim,
okay.
they changed it. There's a whole thing. Yeah. So it's a little bit more fair, because that would have been broken for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's what was going through my head right there.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god.
People were pissed when they took that out, but I was like, you know what? For the way the game's going, that had to be removed, because it was like 100%. You would delete whatever you shot at.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then my favorite one to play as is the rapiers. So these guys are like the scalpel version of them.
Okay, well, I mean, fitting of the name, so yeah.
Exactly. So their stratagem is a 1 CP when a GreyKnight unit fights. On a 6, they get additional hit, which for GreyKnights is huge.
Okay.
They get a lot of attacks.
They get a lot of attacks.
I
Okay,
think
that was my
the
follow-up question.
are 4, and the regular strike marines are 3 flat.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That and I think Primaris are 2 and 3 on a charge.
Exactly. Something along those lines. So having that 6s explode, huge. At least for me, I love being in combat, so that works.
Oh, everyone loves being in combat.
The psychic power for every unit in that army gets +1 attack. So now I'm going to 4 attacks and then 5 with Terminators. And keep in mind, Terminators are troops.
Okay. And okay. Wow. Wow. And okay. So I hope eventually we're going to get into why the GreyKnights are not competitive.
We'll get into that.
Okay.
And then the warlord trait for mine is Advance and Charge, which is always good. You can't go wrong with that.
You can't go wrong with Advance and Charge.
So those are like the 2 that really stand out. Now, each one has its own fun things. There's one that's super defensive. There's one that's psychic. The ward makers are psychic, which is how you can only take like Voldus in that, and there's a whole thing involved with it. But that's kind of where it is. They have the 7 different ones, and those are the 2 for me that stand out, so I'll talk about them. Maybe at another point we can get into them another time.
Yeah.
But what they do get now, which is new in the 9th edition codex, is similar to like other armies that pay points to upgrade characters or things. So there's ones that you can give them like a once per game thing, or you can give them an extra like little buff.
Okay.
So like for one that is most common used is I can give 20 points. I get a 3-up invuln for a turn once per game.
Okay. Yeah.
So that could, like, in a pinch moment, great.
And is that turn or phase?
Turn.
Wow.
So
okay.
If you know, like, because you could send in a Grandmaster Dread Knight, send him in, nuke him in, and then 3-up invuln. He's going to be stopping a lot.
Yeah, no, for sure.
2-up save, 3-up invuln. I mean,
that 3-up invuln, especially with how the game's been progressing, like you almost it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to shoot him this turn or fight him. You know, like you avoid combat with that.
Exactly. And then there's another one you can buy that if a unit or a model or whatever it is, I can't remember exactly. I'll take a look here. I can't remember. But basically, if they get shot at, you can be like, hey, wait a minute, teleport out once per game.
Oh, damn. Okay.
So like I was saying, you could nuke this guy in there and then go, whoop, I'm out.
You're gone.
I think it's a relic or something. But there's so many wombo combos with it, with these upgrades. It's really fun. They're all points, so it's no CPs, which is the best part. That killed me in a lot of other codexes. Is like, oh, you want other relics? 3 CPs.
Okay,
so that's still the same, but this is little buffs to each character.
Right. Okay. So just because we've been going on this for a while and we need to keep it going, you want to give me like a couple stratagems that are like worth talking about really quick?
Yeah, sure. So there is some minor ones that are actually really good. They're like, think of it now, the best way is, I know if people are listening, it would be like Eldar. They're very situational.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is, I find, the way to do it for stratagems.
Oh,
So,
yeah,
like,
stratagem should be ultra specific,
here,
you know?
if a Grey Knight is in your fight, a Grey Knight Terminator in your fight phase, you could just add 1 to hit. Just 1 CP.
Oh,
just
yeah.
+1 to hit.
Oh, yeah, just plus
so
1
hitting
to
on
hit.
2s.
And do they have, as the starties, do they have some sort of transhuman, or is that not a thing
They
for them?
used to. I don't know if they do. It's been a while.
That you play your GreyKnights, yeah. Well, you're going to...
Actually, I played them the other day, but I don't remember having it. It used to be you can give them like a 4... Oh, I don't think they... Oh, here was a True Silver Armor. Yeah, exactly. They have it for 2 CPs on a 5-man, 3 CPs on a 5 or more unit.
Well, I mean, with how
So-
you're describing them and how they play on the tabletop, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So
okay.
it's very costly, but they can get transhuman.
Right.
Another one is there's the GreyKnights. The Dreadnoughts have the wisdom thing, which is actually really good in this army. So if you have a Dreadnought anywhere around the army, it gives the wisdom of reroll 1s to wound or reroll 1s to hit.
Okay.
They have that aura. Now,
Okay.
it's not specific to Grey Knight, but it's still really useful in this army. So other some great Grey Knight specific ones are, I had this one here. Here. In the shooting phase, it's called Death from the Warp. Use a stratagem in your shooting phase. When you pick a Grey Knight Psyker unit, they're all Psykers, that is army to shoot. Till the end of that phase, when it makes a ranged attack, if that unit is set up on the battlefield by teleporting strike, add 1 to the hit roll. Now, keep in mind, every Grey Knight can deep strike, even
Okay.
non-Terminators.
Okay, so it's like custodians in that sense.
Exactly.
Okay. Is it a CP for them?
1 CP.
Okay.
So
okay.
it's to deep strike?
Yeah.
No.
No. Ooh,
No.
wow.
Yeah. So that's the
Ooh,
thing. They're a
okay.
little bit sneaky.
Yeah, they're sneaky right there.
So there's a lot of things that are situational that really make it very fun to play them.
Okay.
There's some anti-psychic stuff like roll 3d6 to deny. So those are for the stratagems. I would say there's a lot. Even the relics, it's not worth getting into. There's nothing that's like a super standout. They're all decent, but they're all situational. There's not really like one that's like, oh, hey, wait a minute, that's a standout. There's some warlord traits that are, but I'll give you one relic. This
Yeah.
one's called the Destroyer of Chrysalix.
What a great name.
Yeah. It replaces a Nemesis Demon Hammer,
Okay.
and it becomes strength times 2, -3 instead of -2 now, flat 4 damage. The only thing is, you're
Dang.
still -1 to hit. But on a character, you're hitting on 3s. You can give yourself buffs to do it. If you're a Terminator, you get +1 to hit with
Oh,
a stratagem.
yes, yeah.
So you're canceling that out. So there's a lot of wombo combos. A flat
Well,
4, that's gonna hurt.
Flat 4, you're popping most vehicles, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, just to close off on the rules, because we're
Yeah.
gonna have to change subject soon. What kind of army is this? Custodians are elite. Nids are horde. Marines for the most part are considered balanced, and knights are ultra elite. What would you consider these guys?
Elite.
They're elite.
They're not ultra elite. Like, I would say they're on par with custodes because you're not going to bring many of them. But they're definitely going to be more models for sure because they're Marines, right? They are, I think, like 20 points for a regular guy. I have to check it again, but they're definitely elite. You start losing numbers, you're going to feel it.
So, like, let's say not competitive. Let's just say, like, people who want to play GreyKnights for fun or anything like that. Like, how many models more or less are they bringing? Because I know for Custodians, to give you an idea, it's around 30, and for like a Space Marines, it's around 60 models. I know that much. So,
Yeah. Probably happily.
Like,
it depends which way you want to go. If you're going
Right.
to go heavy Terminators, you're probably bringing the 30, 40.
Okay.
If you're going, if not less, to be
Yeah.
honest. If you're going more the Marine side, which is like non-Terminator, you'll probably be bringing around 60 because at that point you can start to bring some stuff. But it depends if you want to bring the bigger toys with them.
Yeah, well,
So,
exactly.
Like all the Grandmasters.
Well, like,
and-
just for context, like the number I gave about 60 Marines, that's including like people who are going to bring like big vehicles and elite choice and everything like that. So to close off,
I got one more thing to talk
Go
about.
for it.
Last thing is Kaldor Drago's data sheet because he's the only one. He's one of the only models that still retained a 3-up invuln.
Oh, he kept it.
He kept it.
Okay.
So this is why I wanted, they really represented his data sheet. So I'm just going to go through it quick. I won't go through anything else. But just for him, because we've talked about him, I think it would be fun to have. So he hits on 2s, shoots on 2s, normal. Toughness 4, strength 4, 7 wounds, 6 attacks. So I think that's 1 less than a Custode, right?
6 attacks? Yeah, that's one. Well,
And even the wounds.
Characters, yeah.
Even wounds.
No, Custodians in their new codex got pretty.
They got a lot of
shaky.
wounds? Okay.
Yeah, so keep going, and I'll actually look it up. I got the
he's
codex
got
right next to me.
Yeah, Mastercrafted Stormbolter, so strength 4, -1, 2 damage. For a Stormbolter for GreyKnights, it's great because they all have it. So having a 2 damage bolter always helps. Now here's the funny part. This Titan Sword, which is a power sword, is strength +4. So he's strength 8, -4, flat 3 damage. So it was still very similar to the old decks. They didn't really change it, which I'm really happy because he's still, whatever he's swinging into is dying.
Yeah, for sure. I got the numbers in front of us, so before we get too far off subject, just for context, Trajan Valorous, who is like the headmaster of the custodians, so we're comparing headmaster versus headmaster, 8 wounds, 6 attacks.
Okay, see, he's not far off. He's got
far
one
off,
wound
yeah.
off. You know,
And
like
if we take a shield captain, it's 7 and 6 again.
there
So,
you go. So
like,
I find they really represented his data sheet for how tough and like who this guy is.
well, he's bonkers, right? Like
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
going to take it away from him.
Yeah.
Like we all know I'm a golden fanboy, but like he's
And
something
then
crazy.
Here's the fun part too. So he gets the chapter master rerolls and rerolls 1 to core. Now he knows he can manifest 2 psychic powers and he can attempt to deny 2, but he knows smite and 3 other psychic powers
Okay.
plus the chapter 1. So he knows 5 psychic powers.
Wow. Okay, that is quite a bit of versatility right there.
Yeah, like their characters for GreyKnights are your key. They're the ones that are going to do all the utility, and then the units do all the fun stuff. So that was just one character data sheet that I wanted to look at. There's for sure some other ones we can look at another time, but he was the one that really stands out the most.
Okay, we're gonna take a short 5-minute break to use the washroom, and we'll be back. We'll be back in just a moment. And welcome back, everyone. We just finished, doing everything we need to do in our little break, stretch our legs, get some codexes around and everything like that. And now, for those who were waiting for this moment, we get into my favorite Chaos Warband, the World Eaters, the warband not leaked, or, well, I guess rumored to be in the Chaos Codex coming out. And I don't know about you guys, but when a major faction like Khorne's Berserkers isn't a part of the CSM Codex, that rings a bell in my head.
Agreed. So at least it's just all rumors, right?
Of
And
course.
we're going to speculate. I want to speculate with
No,
you.
so
what's going to be added. And
absolutely, we need to, put it straight down. This is all speculation. We don't have any insider information. This is all stuff that we read online and everything like that. These people are rumoring, but it's sounding like, world leaders are going to get their own thing. So let's get into them.
Let's just look at 8th edition first.
Okie dokie.
Because it's still old Chaos Space Marine, 1 wounds. We won't get into that. They're
No, they're 1 wounds.
So, World Eaters. Their chapter trait is when this unit makes a successful charge, very fitting, you can make 1 additional attack for each with each of its models in the subsequent fight phase. So just +1 attack when you charge.
You're right. Okay.
Huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially since the old rules still have Death to the False Emperor. So
Also, I was reading online. Fun fact about that. Apparently, that doesn't trigger during their second fight phase.
no, it doesn't.
A lot of people make that mistake.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
But because technically they've already fought.
Yeah.
So just in comparison, you want to know what the Word Bearers one is, which I'm a Word Bearers player?
Absolutely.
You get to reroll failed morale. That's it. That's all I get.
Oh my god! And
So-
they shall know no fear. But the world bearers,
Yeah.
they might know fear. So reroll.
Right. It's like that was the chapter trait in 8th edition. So I'm
Right.
very looking forward to something useful in the 9th.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So that's their chapter trait for World Eaters. Now, obviously, we have one of my favorite characters in 40K. He's probably top 10 for me. I have a lot of characters that I like, but he's definitely one of the few. Is Karn? He's their chapter master.
Oh
right?
my god.
So in the game, he's really fun. He's actually really good in 8th edition. Well, the codex they have.
Yeah.
But then I think, I want him to get a super buff. I think he's going to get on par with not an Abaddon size buff, but he's going to be just below him, I'd say. I'd say maybe a couple more wounds, a crap load of attacks probably. I would say probably more than Abaddon, I'm hoping.
If he doesn't get more than Abaddon,
That's what I'm saying.
He doesn't necessarily need to be stronger than Abaddon, but he definitely needs to
Right.
have more attacks.
That's what I'm saying. He doesn't need to be better, but he needs to be close. He needs a glow up because, listen, if Angron comes, he comes. That's a whole other thing we can get into.
but he's coming back. We
Oh,
can get into that later, but
for
you
sure.
know he's coming back.
He's coming back, but he might not be at the release, which could be a missed opportunity since we haven't had anything recently and we know they're coming, at least from the leaks or rumors. But right now, he's still pretty good. The only thing is he's got 5 wounds in the old codex.
which is not enough to
No.
with what a custody. Any custody kills him in 3 successful attacks.
Exactly. And it doesn't even have to be a character. He's just going to melt. He'll hit hard.
He'll hit
but
hard,
melt.
absolutely, but he'll melt. Yeah.
He's got 5 attacks. Let me tell you a Chaos Lord, all right? Chaos Lord in Terminator armor, 6 wounds.
So one more, but fitting for a Terminator. I won't.
A regular Chaos Lord has 5.
What?
Yeah. So take one of the best Chaos fighters ever, and he's got 5 wounds, 6 attacks. There's a lot of attacks.
So for context, to prove my buddy Nick's point, Karn accidentally killed the Grand Master of the Sisters of Silence during the Horus Heresy.
Exactly.
It was literally an accident. That's how of a beast this man is.
He's a monster. And the model is awesome.
Oh my God, it's so good.
But I'm hoping he gets a glow up, And this is where I think now they can have some fun with it. So in terms of other characters, they need another name character. There's got to be somebody. I don't know if they have any. I don't think they do.
See, I'm not enough into world leaders. I just started getting into them.
Yeah.
I love it. The big three world leader characters are Karn, Angron, and Lotara Saren.
Right.
But Lotara is a human, and she's rumored to be merged with the Conqueror, so you can't bring her into the game.
That's going to be a weird mod. How do you
exactly?
bring that,
You can't bring that into the game. Yeah. And then there's Angron. So unless they're they would have to make a new world eater,
right. And I'm
character.
all for it.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously you're shoehorning lore in, but is that really that big a deal?
Right.
Unless
they go the Death Guard route or the Thousand Suns route, because if you look at them, they have 2 named characters each. They got Typhus, Mortarion. Oh my God, Magnus and.
You got this. I'm not going to tell you. You got.
You
this.
know who it is.
Oh, absolutely.
And I know it's with an A, I think.
Yes,
right?
it is.
Oh, it's gonna bother me now.
It's Ahriman.
Ahriman, that's it. Yeah, Ahriman. So they don't have, I don't think, any other named characters besides if you go to the Tzeentch Forge World Super Greater Demon, but that doesn't count.
I mean, again, you and me, we're not experts on when it comes to world eaters. They might have another character, and everyone in their seats is cringing right now. But as far as you and me are aware, it's Karn, and that's it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm seeing here. That's what I'm seeing. So. Character-wise, they need something a real character. If you look at Death Guard, they might not have named characters, but they got a shitload of regular characters.
You just make them a Berserker Lord. Not a Chaos Lord, a Berserker Lord. Anyways, they're war bands, right? They're not Chaos factions, right? So
I still think they should have their own, the basic stuff: a Chaos Lord, Chaos Terminator Lord, all that.
Oh yeah, I don't think we should give them.
But they should be the upgraded version. Look at Death Guard has a Lord of Contagion. It's like the Super Terminator.
Right, but now, are you implying that you would prefer them to be a supplement, or are you saying they should get their own codex?
A whole codex, Death Guard and Thousand Suns.
Yeah.
It's fitting. Why would the other 2 get it and them not?
Well, where does it end, right? Should Iron Warriors get one?
No. See, because now we're hitting to regular Space Marines. That's a supplement to me.
Okay, yeah, they're not unique enough.
No, exactly.
Okay,
so the reason why these armies are getting that is because they're all devoted to one Chaos God. If you look at Iron Warriors, Word Bears, they just take it all in. They're like, give me it all.
Yeah,
undivided.
Yeah, just like how the Night Lords, they're
exactly.
they're not really anything. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So I want them to get their own codex because they really follow one way.
Well, yeah, they're the big 4, right? You got
exactly.
Karn, Typhus, Ahriman, and
Lucius, the Internal. Yeah. So that's what I'm looking at, and obviously Berserkers are going to get troops. They are going to get new models. There's no way they're not. Which I think when they're going to drop, it's going to be wild.
Dynamic or static? What are they getting? Dynamic or static?
Dynamic. But it's going to be dynamic in a static way. Let me explain.
Oh, yeah, it's easy build kind of thing.
Look at Assault Marines.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's what I think they're going to be like.
So they're not gonna be dynamic, and you can make them in a million ways, but they're gonna be 10 models that are moving. So
exactly. Okay. Yeah, I don't think they're gonna be like the Assault Primaris Marines, how they're stepping with swinging a chain sword or something along those lines.
Right.
If you look at Chaos Space Marines, the new lineup here, you can see they are very. There's a mix. There's some static standing, some moving. Right.
Place,
so it kind of teased that, but I think for Berserkers, there's no other way to have them. They're not going to be standing still.
They got to be running.
So I think they're going to get a huge glow up because they're troops. Having them with 2 wounds is going to be ginormous.
I'm a part of the part. I'm not saying Chaos shouldn't get 2 wounds because it's weird for them to not have it, but Chaos has a lot of tricks and plays that where 2 wound Chaos is really dank. It's strong.
It's strong. And then just from the rumors, Chosen, which are the veterans of regular Marines, are 3 wounds.
Oh, yeah. No, that'd be ridiculous.
That's crazy.
That's absolutely...
you give that to World Eaters, if everything's going right for them, I mean, hello.
Oh, my God. And I'm not saying that Chaos shouldn't get these things, but, I I feel like if we were going to give 2 wounds to all these models, which I think they might eventually, but if you're going to give it to them, you would have seen it in Thousand Suns, you would have seen it in Death Guard. There would have been a point increase. It would have been significantly more expensive because you can't. Death Guard didn't lose its toys, but at the same time, like you can't let a model have a fight twice and then just here's a second wound on top of it. That's insane.
Yeah. So they're definitely going to be point costed. They've done a really good job with the 2 books, like the Thousand Suns and stuff. I think they're going to do that right with the Berserkers. They might be even more because of their output. But then I was just thinking, I'm like, I think they're going to make Red Butchers a data sheet.
I think they should.
That would be so cool. Like Death Shroud, like that's their go-to. Yeah,
like, why not?
Like there's so many opportunities they have. Plus, there was a really cool rumor that I wasn't in the leaks, but people are thinking this is the case because they said mutilators, which if you think of obliterators, they're the ones that I painted that kind of like Centurion-looking guys.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
right?
okay.
That's the shootier version of them.
The obliterators or the mutilators?
The obliterators are the shooty version.
And the
mutilators are the fighty version, which were old metal models. They looked really janky, like classic old school Warhammer. Really, really being phased out. Like obliterators, the new version, just beats them every time.
I mean, they look good. They look cool too.
Yeah, I'm right with you. So
anyways.
What people are thinking is that mutilators are going to become Khorne specific, and instead of obliterators, they could have it in the codex too, because it's why not. They're going to have like their version of mutilators, which are going to be the like tougher infantry, fighty version.
So like I'm part of like this group of people who believe that for armies to be unique and everything like that, it's not just abilities and everything like that. They need to have special rules. Yeah. I was a huge fan of the Black Templars plus and minus oath thing that they have.
Yeah.
I would love to see World Eaters get something bonkers like plus fucking, I don't know, 2 to charge, but if you can, you have to.
Yeah. So I think they're going to do it because it seems like they're always like, if you're going to feel the fluff of it, I feel like you're right. Black Templars kind of represents how they're going to do it, where it's going to be a give and take. You're going to get something, you're going to lose something. It's going to be a downside to it.
But that's fun too,
Agreed.
Maybe not in a competitive sense, but like on a tabletop, it's fun.
Right. And you know what? Even competitively, I'd argue that it separates, let's say, the weak-minded versus the strong-minded, where it's like, okay, I got to think a little more.
Well, like, I agree with you 100%. Like the katas for the custodies, right? Like that's my number one roadblock right now for like the competitive side. Like I can look at the lists that people are building. I can understand what they're doing with these lists, but like playing the katas at the right time and everything like that, that's piloting,
Exactly.
And piloting is a skill that needs to be developed, and that'd be really cool,
Right. And I'm hoping they do, because realistically, if you look big picture, World Eaters don't have a lot going for them. No. Like it's basically charge, fight, rage. Yeah. It's the best way to describe it. There's nothing like in between, which you can argue, okay, Thousand Suns is all about magic, and Nurgle is you can't hurt me, and which is, everybody has their shtick, but I find Games Workshop rule-wise has very well incorporated the like, let's say the chapters that follow the gods in a really cool way. They've done it right, I feel like. So I'm very excited for World Eaters. I'm not even a World Eaters player, but I'm excited for them. Because one, in order to have their own codex, you're going to need models.
Oh, 100%.
Like data sheets and everything. Like you can't just be like, hey, Chaos Space Marine Codex plus buffs.
Yeah, because that's just a supplement
like,
at that point.
They're not going to get rubric marines, all that, obviously. But like, even there's some
Berserkers
things
are basically their thing already.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But which is why I think they're going to get some either new stuff like the mutilators. They can't not have unique things. Because then it kind of takes away from that.
I have a vague memory of during the Horus Heresy, the World Eaters had a group of heavy support units that were like their havocs, so to speak. But these guys were renowned amongst the World Eaters because they were like able to stay calm. Like that's why they could use a gun and not like the butcher's nails just didn't get to them. Like it did.
That's so cool. No way. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So like it did get to them, obviously, right? Like killing helped them soothe the pain and everything like that. But because they were the most like, they were like, I don't need to go smack somebody to feel better. They were given all the heavy weapons and everything like that. And that'd be kind of cool to have. Like,
so cool. You're right.
That'd be cool to have that,
Or have it where it's like, like the give and take. Shooting, or fighting, you get +1 hit, but -1 to shoot.
Oh, yeah.
Something along those lines might be, okay, that might be really strong. Like it might be more to it, but something along those lines would
No,
be
no,
really
absolutely.
fun.
I agree with like Karn. He's amazing, fighter and everything like that. You really think when he's in his berserker rage, he's taking time to aim his plasma pistol?
Exactly.
Hell
yeah.
no. His rules already represent that he needs to always overcharge.
Yeah, that's it.
The
Always
dude's,
overcharge.
The dude's not aiming.
And then rolls of 1 always hurt your models. Like if your guys are there, yeah.
He's not aiming. Let's be real here. So,
but and that I love that, and I hope they keep rules like that for this army, because along with a bunch of stratagems and stuff, it would be awesome. Now, I know they had their own little mini supplement with the Psychic Awakening thing. I don't know much to them. I think you've played them once. I
played them at our Eldar versus Chaos APOC, which actually is a thing. I'm as surprised as it sounds. It wasn't Chaos versus Imperium.
Yeah.
But yeah, I played them. I got absolutely smashed. But it was fun. Just being angry, rage,
Yeah, it was fun because it's the way the 8th edition codex is, unfortunately, it's sad to say, it's like a very, I got to get in there and do in charge. There's no way of saying
there's
it's
nothing,
kind of boring in a
do.
way. That's the way I meant to say it. Because like you look at Death Guard, there's like some theme to it. Thousand Suns could beat you down with magic first, and then, beat you down with magic, and then kind of take over, charge or whatever. Unfortunately, World Eaters is just kind of go. Yeah. So I'm hoping they give like a little bit more dynamic play to them, where it's not just, hey, do this, go. Obviously, their theme is combat. Like they're the chaos combat guys. So
yeah, for sure.
The only thing is now, if I'm not mistaken, they can't do any psychic, right? They got no psychics.
No. So Khorne is super anti-psychic. Khorne demons even get a +1 to deny.
Yeah, some deny. They have like some demons that can deny, but that's it. Yeah.
No. So magic is no honor brew, and oh my god, I'm gonna get canceled just for making that joke right there. But yeah, no.
But that just leads to my point: is that okay? You're cutting out a lot of HQs.
Yep.
Like there's a lot of stuff that has psychic, so that's half the codex.
Have you ever heard of a berserker medic? It's like they don't even have apothecaries. So
do they have? I'm assuming they have dark apostles like chaplains and stuff.
So they're allowed as of 8th edition. They're allowed to play them and everything like that. Yeah. But as far as I'm aware, being a Khorne berserker is simplistic. It's fight, kill, maim, burn.
Exactly. So that's where I find that GW's got their hands full with this, because they can make it really boring and very simple, or they can give it a dynamic element to it.
Well, I was talking to our buddy, and he was saying that that's kind of their thing. Their thing is kill, maim, burn. And I, for one, am in the belief that they should, tone back that berserker rage a little bit, just a tiny bit. Give them some more personality, because, if they're just berserkers, they're just always angry. Where's the lore in that? Yeah, they're berserkers. Yeah, they're cool. Yeah, they have that pseudo Viking aesthetic and everything like that. But
here, you know what annoys me? If you want to make a World Eater army now, the only troop choice you have, I think, is either cultists and berserkers.
You can take CSM.
Can you?
Yeah, you can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But still, what's the point?
But what's the point?
Yeah.
Because the whole thing about playing World Eaters is bringing berserkers as a troop choice. If you're gonna bring CSM because competitively speaking, it's maybe a better decision. But aside from that, no, you're absolutely right. You're going to put cultists on backfield. You're going to put berserkers in drop pods or rhinos, whatever to pick your poison. So CSM are basically not picked at this point. So what I think you're getting at is the World Eater Codex needs to make Zerkers a more popular choice, rather than just the fact that they...
Or 2 variations. You got a troop choice and an elite choice.
Oh, yeah.
The elite choice could be what we have now, which is just go. Full out rage mode, super attacks.
Yeah.
Kind of like a possessed almost for a chaos.
I know it doesn't sound very nuanced, and some people will be I don't hear the difference, but you could have Khorne berserkers and you could have Khorne Knight berserkers. And it's just there's a subtle difference between them. Maybe Khorne Knight berserkers are lost to the nails, and they always need to
advance in charge or something. Yeah, something along those lines would be
fun. That'd be so cool.
They gotta mix it up, because realistically, there's not that many. Right now, there's not a lot of Khorne specific things that they can really work.
But hear me out. This, I think this would be cool for an elite choice, right? You call them whatever you want to call them, but they're still berserkers, right? Here's their rule set. Okay, they can advance and charge. However, caveat: they need to advance and they need to charge if they can, naturally.
Or even instead of a swap, have it a 20 point, 30 point buff to the unit. It's like now they're elite slot, but they get all these things.
Oh, okay.
So it's like upgrading that, or like Terminators even, right? If you take them as the elite slot, but then you can be like, oh, for 50 points, they become the Red Butchers. Rather than a CP, because I find the CPs boring.
No, I mean, I feel like GW is slowly moving away from stratagems as well because of that survey they did a while back. I'm pretty sure it was a resounding, unanimous is the word I'm looking for, agreement that stratagems are not healthy. Not healthy is the wrong word, but they're not for the game. Players are not excited about new stratagems.
No, and to be honest, there's just too many. It's situational. For me, it's poop. So something the GreyKnights do fun is their psychic powers. You used to be able to choose them all. Now, each unit is given a specific power, unless you're a character you can pick. So I'm hoping like AOS, the way they've done it is, hey, you get 4 command points, your general's alive, the game started, you get an extra one, and then you get this many per turn, or you can do stuff during the game. We only get 4 per battle round, 4 or 5 at the most if you're lucky. It's usually around 3 or 4. So you got 3 CPs to spend on your stratagems, which is basically like each warlord or character can give a buff, or a unit can give itself a buff for a command point or something. And then there's some like general stratagems you can use. For me, I love that because now every stratagem becomes very important. And it's like, do I use it now? Do I not? Whereas having 12 CP, I could blow all 12 CP in turn 1 or 2 and then be like, hey, did I win? No? Great, I'm about to lose.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, and that's where I think stratagems, it's either got to be like what Eldar did. So Eldar did a great job for what's given, with CPs being all around, but the stratagems aren't like, hey, transhuman. It's very specific to each thing. So it's like, oh, you got, I don't know, let's say striking scorpions. You get this if you do this.
Okay. Yeah.
You know?
Harleys get to advance in charge if they roll the 4+ on their advance or something like that.
It's something along that. Yeah, they get like other rules, but it's very like stratagems are unit specific and situations that they're meant for. So I'm like, I'm all for it. Make the data sheets fun and have their own rules, and then the stratagems are less generalistic and more specific is the best way to have it.
Now, I wish our buddy Seb was here right now because from what I remember, you can correct me if I'm wrong, in the rumors, Emperor's Children are not in the Codex either.
They are not.
So here's the thing, right? I feel like in a mass community, at least in North America, Khorne is more popular than Emperor's Children. But why do the people at the TEDS group think it's Khorne instead of Slaanesh coming back?
So,
because I'm firmly on the camp of Khorne. I really am.
I want Khorne, but there has been way more leaks, teases, mentions in official GW stuff of Fulgrim.
Right.
Like really like out there. So it's like even before even World Eaters were even going to be their own codex, everybody knew it was coming because the other 2 got them. So personally, based on what I had seen prior to these rumors and stuff, I thought it was going to be Slaanesh. I thought they were going to come first. Emperor's Children and all that. So I'm leaning obviously to World Eaters being first after the rumors and stuff. I think they're more popular because one, people can understand them more. I think with Slaanesh, sometimes it crosses a line.
It crosses the line of like debauchery.
Exactly.
And like everyone likes to debauch a little bit. Like, let's be real here, but like it gets excessive.
And then I think it's also just a thing where it's like, oh, you're an Emperor's Children fan? Okay, what's up with you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I love them. Personally, I think they're really cool. I like all the 4 gods because they all have their own specific thing, which I really like. They're not generalistic, and it's really cool. So like, I'm sure there's actually quite a good amount of Emperor's Children players.
Oh, there has to be because Fulgrim.
But everybody's just like, I'm not going to do anything, and they're like, old models.
There has to be a large group because like Sound Marines are renowned. People love Sound Marines, and like Fulgrim is. I don't want to say he's more popular than Angron, but I think he is.
I would say he is in Primarch level.
In Primarch,
but I think everybody knows Angron more because they did write him well. But
they wrote him very well. Yeah.
I think World Eaters, it's easier to grasp and go along with their theme.
Well, I mean, they're just mad. You know, they're not trying to turn humans into space cocaine and rip lines. You know, like
yeah, exactly. So like you look at Slaanesh, the first thing that everyone thinks of is like you said, debauchery. But they're actually very perfectionist.
Yeah,
they're very detailed. They're like a scalpel about like 6 or like 1,000 scalpels. Absolutely, you know, so there's a whole other side to it that I feel like people that really pay attention will notice it. But then if you're just like the average Joe and you're like, oh yeah, well, Khorne's obviously going to be more attractive because it's simple, it's fun to grasp. To me, it's more fun going to them. But I think Slaanesh has a lot of twists and turns that might throw people off.
Yeah, I agree. That being said, to close off this little segment, I really think Khorne is coming back just because both Angron and Fulgrim, like who's going to determine their codex coming back first, at least, is definitely who's going to progress the story a bit more.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest with you, Fulgrim, if Fulgrim comes back, he might be the champion of, he's not the champion, but like the demon prince of Slaanesh or anything like that, but he's still intelligent, you know?
Yeah.
And like Gilliman can't handle three power marks by himself. He can't do it.
So
Angron's gonna be a curveball. But Angron, at least he's gonna do his own thing. So his brothers Morty and Magnus aren't gonna go look at him and be like, "Hey, Angron, help us crush him." But like they could convince Fulgrim. So that's where it becomes problematic, you know?
It's like join Angron in his like ridiculous crusade of killing, or like in a backseat and help them as they go along to get to whatever they need. But like, yeah, I could see Magnus, Mortarion, Fulgrim having a conversation and going, okay, how do we get this to work?
Yeah. So I think for story, until another loyalist comes back, I think Fulgrim tips the balance into chaos too much.
So yes, but here's my point. So I think World Eaters are going to come out. If Angron comes, awesome. I'm all freaking for it. Let's get like the Imperium scared. Beginning of 10th is either going to be two things. 9th edition is going to end with the Emperor's Children coming out, and it'll be a little bit of time. End of 9th, 10th edition, they're going to release 2 Loyalists.
Oh, you think 2?
And that's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
It's going to be like a huge... Now, that's obviously like... It makes no sense for GW money-wise. Story-wise, it would. Because at this point now, you got 4 Chaos Primarchs of each god versus Gilliman.
I mean, does it really not make sense money-wise? Like, if you bring back 2 Primarchs,
everybody's starting armies.
Everybody's starting armies.
Agreed. So that's my thinking of it. It's like, you got the Lion who's taking a nap.
Yeah.
You got Dorn, who's a farmer with Vulcan. Like, you can pick. Yeah. You could bring both of those 2 back.
You can bring Vulcan and Dorn back. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, this is the dire situation. It's 4 Chaos Gods. Let's say they convince, and you got a mini Horus Heresy kind of going on. And then, boom, here's 2 Primarchs from the Loyalists. Like, a big reveal. They could really make... That was my thinking, depending how they release in 9th. Like, obviously, if... they don't release any Primarchs, right? Like, if World Eaters come out and there's nothing that comes with it, well, there goes my theory.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, for sure. But, I mean, like, for me, what sketches me out is... Well, sketches is absolutely the wrong word, but for me, what is on my mind is Gilliman's the only Primarch right now. And Gilliman was put in his stasis by Fulgrim. So, look, I don't want to pick favorites. I'm really excited to start a World Eaters army, but, like, you're right. Everything points towards Fulgrim at the end of the day, you know? And it's just like... I don't know, but I think what World Eaters have going for them is they're the more popular faction.
Right. Or they're going to do the opposite, where it's going to be World Eaters come out, no Angron, you get their codex, everything.
Fulgrim.
Emperor's Children comes out with that,
Fulgrim.
And then Angron comes in 10th edition or something like that.
Well, okay. So let's wrap this up. If it's Fulgrim that comes back, let's say it's Fulgrim that comes back, who are the Loyalists that come back? Who makes sense? Because Fulgrim, like we said, Fulgrim, Magnus, and Morty can have a conversation and they can get shit done.
Yeah.
So you need a Primarch who can go to Gilliman and be like, I trust you, you know?
Yeah. Like I said, I think it's going to be one of the ones that we've kind of known the most about, like Lion. Maybe not Dorn or Vulcan, because we don't know much other than that they're partying or farming together.
Yeah, well,
so
there's context behind that our viewers don't really get, but we'll get into that one day.
Yeah, like, or you can even bring the Khan back if he's mixing up with Eldar or something.
If it's Fulgrim coming back, why not the Khan? He's partying it up with the Dark Eldar right now. You know, like Dark Eldar, Slaanesh. You know, who knows? He'll come back as a different person. I don't know.
Yeah. So, or you bring back one of the ones that's going to cause a bit of controversy, which is going to be fun. Like, Leman Russ,
Korax, yeah.
Like, you can bring back some of these that might be a red flag. Like, it might be like, hey, wait a minute, you know?
Well, I think we this is a popular fan theory amongst our group. I think Korax and Russ are going to come back mutated. You know, they're going to be like demons almost,
or
right?
like Leman Russ is going to have, I think he's going to have like a werewolf version. Like, he gets rage mode and then he's going to be Odin Thor, and then, or Odin like old man, and then he gets angry, and like after he takes like a certain amount of wounds, werewolf mode or something.
Yeah. Well, right before we get into our hobby tip, I want to get into this, and everyone who hasn't read the book Penitent by Dan Abnett, please skip away right now. I'll put a timestamp to not listen to this next part. I want to talk to you, Nick, about this. Okay, we got.
Oh, I'm excited.
Oh yeah, so we have Trajan Valoris making some good demons in the webway right now.
Not
Sorry, not
yeah. What's his name?
Constantine Valdor.
Yes,
making good demons in the webway. What? Whoa! Can you imagine? He comes back, and then it's like we got good demons. Everyone's like freaking out and everything, and then all of a sudden, Corvus comes back as like a raven. Everyone's like, "Oh my god, he's corrupted!" And Constantine's like, "Nah, that's legit." And he's so cool.
It would definitely throw a huge curveball that I don't know if people are ready for. They'd have to handle it the right way. I don't think he'll come back like a big raven thing, but he'll definitely have wings.
Yeah,
like I think he'll still have a human form, but he'll be like he'll have something for sure.
Yeah,
and yeah, the good demons. I think Gilliman is going to notice that it's. What's his name?
Valdor.
Well,
he would know him. He would know him.
He would know him like firsthand because of how long it had been. So when Valdor's like, "Look, you got this," Gilliman might look the other way.
Well, so here's the thing, right? So Gilliman, at the end of the day, wants to protect humanity. He wants to protect Alshmar, right? And Gilliman knows that the Custodians are loyal to the Emperor to the letter. So Gilliman, his only true controversy in his mind would be, does Constantine Valdor want to protect humanity, or does he want to protect the Emperor?
Exactly.
Because depending on that answer is where Gilliman's going to stand with Constantine. Because if he's like, no, he wants to protect humans, Constantine Valdor could show up and do the most heretical stuff possible, and Gilliman's going to be like,
at this point, Gilliman's going to take what he can get because it's not looking good.
Now, I had a theory. This is a fan theory. Hear me out. They discontinued Legion of the Damned.
Yes, I'm over it.
I know you are.
I hate that. More than anything.
Good demons with flying Astartes.
Oh, you know what? That would be cool. It'd be a good way to link that missing secret. It annoys me. It's like they're scapegoat in every serious situation.
They absolutely are. But now, imagine Constantine Valdor traveling through the Webway, discovered what's going on with these Legion of the Damned, and he's all like, I'm going to recruit you guys, and I'm going to turn you into a functioning party.
I would love it. I'm for.
That'd be cool.
I'm for because it gives them some reason, gives them a little bit more everything instead of this random ass entity that comes out of nowhere. It just shows up. And it's like, how did this random amount of Space Marines figure out this is how we could just teleport?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
What?
I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Now, okay, rant's a little over right now. So we're gonna get into the hobby tip of the day. We're gonna talk about one thing that a lot of people are afraid of. One thing that people like myself just kind of overlook because they're like, oh, well, I don't need to do it. And in your words and in my own opinion, complete the model, transfers. That's one thing that GW gives us with almost every pack we buy. It's one thing a lot of people are too afraid to touch. Nick, you claim, and it's not even a claim because I've seen it happen, to have a very easy way to do it. You want to go through this.
It's very easy, but it's a little time consuming because you got to wait for stuff to dry. If you can do that, you're all set.
I mean, dude, we're hobbying, right? You know,
exactly.
It's like your batch paid a 10-man intercessor squad. You got time.
Exactly. And usually you could do this while they dry. You could do something else. That's what usually I do. So it's very easy to do transfers. Super easy. You cut it, put it in water, stick it on. You're good. You know? They might scratch. They're going to look off because it's a plastic film over it, right? And you got matte paint. It's going to look funny. So you want to try to blend those together. So through a lot of practice and a lot of research, there's a few products you're going to need, but it makes it look super smooth.
So just to keep clarify, you're saying a lot of practice, but you're not implying that the process is very challenging. You're just saying that you had to work on this a lot.
Yeah. For me personally, it took me a while to get it where I was happy, where it didn't look like, oh, that's a transfer. I wanted it to be like, oh, did he freehand that? Obviously, I didn't because I'm not a freehand person, but I wanted to if you didn't know better, you would know that that was a transfer.
Okay.
So it kind of to blend in with the painting.
Right. Okay.
Now, it took a little bit of time, but I've even a month ago, I figured out something else that helps like crazy. So say you got your shoulder pad, armor panel, whatever it is. The thing to do so that it blends properly is not to put the transfer is going to be in the middle of the shoulder pad. Don't just focus on the middle of the shoulder pad. Focus on the whole shoulder pad you're doing it on, the whole area. So what I did now and recently is I took gloss varnish. It could be any gloss varnish. I used Vallejo because it was what I had with some thinner. I did about 50-50. It's already pretty thin varnish, but the problem is if you go straight varnish, it could leave streak marks.
It kind of clumps up a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a little finicky to use to get it right without noticing that it's like, ugh. And the reason you gloss varnish is because it gives the transfer something to adhere to very, very well other than the paint. Because the gloss varnish it's like a stickier kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the transfer is a plastic. So
Yeah.
onto the paint, it's not going to adhere as well. So over gloss varnish, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's how I start. Start wherever I'm doing the transfer, wherever I'm putting transfers, is always the gloss varnish with the 50/50 thinner. And you'll see it's still going to varnish and everything, but it's actually going to run smoother and dry better without a streak mark. So that's step one. Step two, cut the transfer. The best way to deal with the transfer, right? You cut it, do the square. Most transfers, unless you get them custom made, all of the Games Workshop ones are pre-cut. So it doesn't matter what shape you cut the blue little film on, it'll come out in the shape you need. Best way to do it, soak up a sponge, completely wet, put it in a Tupperware, somewhere where it's not going to leak everywhere, put the transfer on top of it. What happens is the water from the sponge and everything hits the blue film underneath and releases the transfer to be picked up very easily. I'm foolish and I like drown it in water because it makes it, and then I like fishing for it like a challenge. But honestly, it's the best way to do it with a sponge. Simple, gets it, you got your transfer. Now here comes the second product you're going to need. It's called Micro Set. So this is like a product that kind of eats away at the plastic film slightly.
But not the models.
No, yeah, the paint, it doesn't touch the paint. This is specifically for the plastic film. Right. I don't know how this company did it, but it really targets just that film. The reason why Micro Set you put first is because it's less harsh.
Right. Okay.
So the first time you want to do it, you want it to really just start sticking to the paint or the varnish.
So
very easily.
because you're kind of like melting the transfer in a sense, it becomes stickier and it's easier for it to adhere in a sense.
It kind of,
right?
not even stickier, it just melts like the film. So it starts getting towards the paint, start melting it into the paint slightly. Now the set is very minor. It's just to get in the right position, and it kind of makes the transfer soft, let's say.
Okay.
That's the first set. You only need one coat of that. You don't want to do too many of those because it's useless at that point.
And when you say coat, how much are we talking? Like a one brush over? Like what are we saying?
Yeah, I wouldn't go too thick on the Micro Set, like just like dump it and put it on. The reason why is because it's still a loose transfer and it could slip and slide around depending how much you put. So if it's at an angle, it could follow the trail. Like obviously liquids go to creases and everything. So if you have a Space Marine shoulder pad and you're putting it in the middle, but maybe his arm's upward and the liquid goes to the bottom of the shoulder pad, the transfer might follow it.
Okay, so because we don't have visuals going on right now. Once you place the transfer before applying the Micro Set, how much Micro Set am I grabbing on, like, let's say a number one paintbrush? You know, like a standard.
The best way I would describe it is think of dipping your brush and using a wash, but not like a wash where you're just slapping it on.
So you're being generous, but you're not being abundant. Kind of thing. Okay.
You don't want it to kind of like pool in a big glob somewhere else, right? Because then the transfer will follow to the pool.
So it's almost like glazing to a certain degree.
Kind of.
Okay.
Kind of. At least for the Micro Set.
Right. Okay.
Micro Set.
Next step.
Now that this transfer is starting to adhere to it, you're going to put a lighter coat, similar to the same way as the set, with now what's the second product, or third product, I guess, which works in tandem with it, is Micro Sol. Now this one's the more aggressive. This one will eat away at the plastic film and really start to melt that transfer to it.
Right. And again, we got to reiterate, you're melting the transfer, not the model.
Paint. Yeah, the paint will stay there and won't harm it in any way. I'm actually incredibly surprised. And trust me, I've used a lot. I've drowned it in it because I've tested it. Mm-hmm. Nothing. So you definitely want these products. Micro Set, Micro Sol.
And for the average person, you know, we're Canadian, so our money isn't very valuable compared to who probably will be listening to us. What do each bottle run for? Because I know they're similar price.
Canadian. So obviously with COVID, when they weren't making it, it went up a lot. Yeah. But regularly, it's probably about $6-7 Canadian. So let's say $5 American.
Maybe even $4.
Maybe even $4. Yeah, it's a pretty cheap cost. And to be honest, I've been in the hobby 6.5 years.
Yeah.
I bought these a year or two in because somebody brought it up to me and I started working with them. I still have the same bottles.
Yeah, no. You told me about that, and I was like, "What?"
And I even spilled my Micro Set, and it's about half.
Yeah,
or a Micro Sol.
Oh wait, these are original bottles.
These are the original bottles that I
Holy
first bought.
moly! You want to tilt the Micro Set for me? Micro Sol. I mean, yeah, that one.
Micro Set is almost full.
God.
Micro Sol, I spilled, so it's half.
For context, people, the reason I'm freaking out right now is he has like 3 armies with full transfers, and these are like 3K armies too.
Yeah. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, I think, with transfers.
God. So this is a great investment we're getting at.
Right.
Now, you probably scared off a lot of people when you said gloss varnish.
Yes.
So can we fix this?
Yes, exactly. So when you put the Micro Sol, the first coat, light coat. Then you're going to put 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever makes you feel happy till you get the right angle, because it softens the transfer and it's starting to now blend the transfer. Now, you got to seal that in, because if that transfer now gets marked or anything, it's still going to get scratched. It's a transfer. It's going to happen. So what you do is go back to the gloss varnish, scary again, same thing, 50-50, and you put it right over the transfer and the whole shoulder pad area. Same thing. So like if I have that inner shoulder pad, I'm putting it across the whole thing again.
And that's going to blend it.
It's going to blend it, and it's going to seal the transfer so it can't get marked, scratched, moved.
Right.
Now, so obviously now we got a gloss shoulder pad. Now you got to go back. We got to trace back a bit,
like
right?
a gloss chest as well if you're airbrushing this and everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
now you're going to want to go back, right? So now it's depending on what is your army, like what is the theme of your army? If you have a gloss finish, then you're set. If you have a matte finish, okay, now we're bringing out the matte varnish. Right?
So the idea is that you always need to re-go over with a matte. Now, varnishing is something, as me being a newer hobbyist, I recognize as, varnishing is not something that people talk about a lot. It's not something that you think about. Let's pretend your entire army, you've always done your army no varnish. Which varnish would you recommend to get them back to that OG paint color you got them? Not, obviously it's not perfect.
Yeah.
But like close enough.
Really any matte varnish, as long as it's a decent
matte.
one.
We're talking matte, not satin, not.
Well, that's depending on what your army theme is going for. If you're going for a satin color, then you would want to finish the transfer, the second coat of that layer.
Okay, well, like let's take my new Imperial Fist that I've been doing. Right, I do the black base coat, and then I dry brush my yellows and everything like that, and I get that grimdark look. Now, let's say you want to keep that grimdark look because we're in the grimdark area. Obviously not Blanchitsu or anything like that. Matte would not harm the model. It would look fine.
Most paints are matte finish.
Yeah.
So you always probably go back to that depending what you're going for. Right. Obviously, like my flesh tears are a satin finish.
Right.
So I always go back with a satin varnish over the transfer. Yeah. And actually what I do sometimes too is I'll go matte varnish and then I'll go satin over it.
Okay.
So like it brings it down the gloss a lot, because sometimes going satin right from gloss, it's still a little shiny.
Too little glossy, you need to refix it.
It's not consistent.
Okie dokie. Well, with all this being said, those are some great tips, and honestly, you guys, you just take our word for it. It's a great process. Like, it works very, very well. We're not sponsored by any of these people. We have no reason to be telling you to do this, but it's a good system for transfers. With that, we're gonna wrap up our podcast today. We thank you very much for listening to our podcast. Happy to have you back if it's not your first time, and if it's your first time, hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. Post us up, follow us on Twitter. We're pretty active on all these social medias. We'll be happy to respond if ever we can, and we'll see you next week. Okay, bye.